BMW has always been one of my longtime favorite car brands. Specifically, I got hooked on their incredibly refined cars when the F33 series made its debut in 2012. I loved its design, and still do to this day. However, BMW was cooking up something way cooler. The F32 4 Series, which essentially replaced the 3 Series Coupe, took the F30 and made it more beautiful. But for me, I always liked having a set of back doors. Luckily, BMW had something else in store. The BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe, dubbed the F36. The one I'm looking at today was the top-of-the-line 440i, introduced in 2016, which includes the now legendary B58. That's the code for BMW's beautiful 3-liter twin-scroll turbo inline-6 that makes 320 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque in its base configuration. Even better, this one has the MPPSK, which is an exhaust system that adds an additional 35 horsepower, bringing the power to 355. Take a listen. Today, I'm going to go in-depth on one of my favorite four-door sports cars, the 2018 BMW 440i. And I want to give a massive thank you to Finlay Toyota for providing me with this 4 Series for the morning. Straight away, the 440i is finished in this clean alpine white, showcasing all of its fantastic body lines. I absolutely love this M Sport front bumper. The kidney grills are neatly integrated with the scoop right beneath, and also with these optional adaptive LED headlights, which include a sweet DRL profile and this weird orange blinking light. Not sure what that is. Jokes aside, the regular LEDs don't feature the eyelash style turn signal, so I love this look. The M Sport bumper also integrates LED fog lights and a conservatively designed lower mouth. Plus, the 440i features functional air curtains for added aerodynamics. This is one of the best front noses ever done by BMW. However, I did notice a little tear on the bottom of the front bumper. While this can easily be repaired, it's something worth mentioning. Down the side, you'll immediately notice not only parking sensors, but also cameras. This has not only front side cameras, but also top-down cameras in the mirrors, which even though they are heated and auto-dimming with built-in signals, they don't have blind spot. I've seen that feature on lower trims of this generation. It's disappointing, but I'm glad there aren't a ton of safety nannies to bother me on my drive. The wheels are some of the bbest ever. These 19-inch 704M style wheels. And even though the rubber is thin, I was really surprised by how smooth the ride was. Other exterior bits include the wing, keyless entry for the front door with the exposed key slot and LED illumination, an M Sport side skirt, a beautiful shoulder line, and the iconic Hofmeister kink with the Gran Coupe written in the corner. But best of all, the doors are frameless. Working our way around back, you'll notice full LED taillights, brake lights, dedicated turn signals, and even the reversing lights, unlike the F30. The rear end is so clean. There's some nice swoops in the lower bumper, along with your diffuser. This is where your MPPSK exhaust lives. The dual single exhausts note that this is a 40i model, and it sounds real good. Let's listen to it one more time. Best of all though, it's a hatchback, unlike the coupe and sedan. We'll come back for that in a bit. But one of my favorite F3X design traits is the interior, which is one of the best designed modern BMW interiors, featuring the best steering wheel and buttons. This one in particular has the cognac leather with the burl walnut wood trim. Now, once you are inside, you're greeted with this lovely leather-wrapped M Sport steering wheel as denoted by this M badge. It's got some nice silver trim, but not too much. It's very tastefully well done. It's got a nice, perfectly round horn about the size of my hand. It's got these absolutely massive paddle shifters that have a pretty good feel to them, and they got some nice metal backing there. Now, these right side buttons include a bunch of media controls. These are your volume up and down buttons. This dial basically functions as a back and next button, so you can move it up and down, and then when you're on CarPlay, which I'll get into in a minute, you can actually press it, and you can go through all of the different musics that you have on there. You can see I'm set in order by name right now. Now, pressing this button allows you to change the music mode. So you can switch between Bluetooth, AM, FM, and Sirius XM, which is awesome. This is your voice control button. This you can use to hang up and answer calls. The left side includes all of your cruise controls, though sadly, we do not get adaptive cruise control, which would live right here. You can use this button to turn the cruise control on right there, and you can see you can move the cruise control thing, and it'll move this needle up and down the dial. Since we're not moving, we can't actually demonstrate this, but you can see how it works. It's really cool. I'll get into the gauge cluster in just a second, but here you can resume it, you can set it, and then you can use this dial to move the speed up and down. There is a cool mod that is very popular in the F30 community, where you can add M1 and M2 buttons to cycle between driving modes. I'll get into that in a second as well.
Over here you have your turn signal stalk, and it actually doesn't work like older BMWs as it stays perfectly down and up each time. It feels amazing, and there's even your high beam control. Press this button and you control the onboard computer. You can see it is mostly analog, but it actually has a digital element down here. You could upgrade to get the 6WB cluster. This one is the 6WA. As you can see, it has this digital. The regular non-6WA cluster has a little dial here, but that's more complicated. If you do want to add a 6WB cluster, you can add one for about $2,000, but this was also a common option on these cars. Press this button though, and you can cycle through a bunch of different settings. I got date and time, nothing at all, miles to empty, miles per gallon, our current miles per gallon, and our average speed. Now, even though we don't get a digital speed readout, we actually get one on our heads-up display. You can kind of see it right here, and it'll even show you the speed limit, which is a really cool feature, and that more than makes up for the lack of a digital speedometer. You can even see that there's an actual speed limit 35 set up there, so it's really accurate. Over here is your fuel gauge. Over here is your temp gauge, so you can wait for your engine to warm up. This is your tachometer, and this is your speedometer with additional kilometer conversions. Now, this screen can actually change depending on what driving mode you're in. So for example, if I switch the driving mode, not only does it show me right here, which is part of that whole M1 and M2 button situation I was talking about, but it can also change what shows here. So if I switch to Eco Pro, it'll actually show me my efficient dynamics. I'm not even really sure what that does, but it's kind of cool that it's there anyways. Yeah, this is not a very functional thing. Most BMW owners will know that, but you can see your time lives there, odometer lives there, your trip meter lives here, along with your temperature and the onboard computer. So overall, even though it's not a fully digital gauge cluster, it's a pretty nice setup. And the wiper stalks feel just as good as the turn signals, plus they have an automatic wiper setting. How neat is that?
Lastly, the steering wheel is manually tilting and telescoping with a wide range.
Now on the left here are all of your headlight controls. We of course have automatic headlights. I believe these are the driving lights. We have your full-on headlights, and then here you can adjust the gauge cluster lighting. Press this button and you can turn on and off your fog lights, though obviously this has to be on in order for you to do that. The door panels are incredibly nice. They have this nice soft touch element on the back. I love the brown on this interior, a lot more than I thought I would. I'm not usually a fan of a brown interior, but it looks nice here. There's some nice, like, I guess this is like either leather or pleather, but it's a nice soft touch material. I like the big metal grab handle. It looks like it's kind of floating. I like this wood trim here. Not to everybody's taste, but it's very nicely done here. There's that soft touch that will probably disintegrate in the next 5 to 10 years, but it actually feels just fine on this car. Over here we have one touch down and up for all 4 windows. We have mirror adjustments here. And not only do we have one touch down and up windows, but we also have power folding mirrors, a nice big padded armrest, and surprisingly large door pockets with a little insert for a cup. Which leads me on to the footwell. If we pull this, we have a nice little hidden door, which no one will know about unless, of course, they watch this video. Maybe you could put your iPod there, I don't know. And then down here is your pedal box. Press this button and it'll open the lift gate, which we'll take a look at in a minute. This will open up the hood to access your beautiful B58 engine, and we even have the optional stainless steel pedal caps that came with the car. Plus, it's a floor-mounted pedal, which I'll talk about in a little bit with my driving impressions. Now, this being a slightly older BMW, I love how you can turn on and off the automatic engine start-stop. And it's right next to the start-stop engine. But the best part is that it stays on by default. So if you turn this on, it'll remember the setting every time you start the car. And it's always important to note that if the key is ever low on battery, you can just hold it right up to this little icon here. Next is the 8.8-inch iDrive head unit. Now, surprisingly, since this car was built in June of 2017, it does not have a touchscreen, unfortunately. But not only is it pretty easy to add, so this also has the nicer iDrive dial as a result of the 8.8-inch iDrive upgrade. So even though it's not a touchscreen, you can actually write on the screen, which is really cool. But my favorite part about the iDrive head unit is that this one actually has the optional Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. What's really cool is that if you go into any of the applications in the iDrive system, there's a shortcut to access them right within CarPlay. And of course, I'm not going to show my location, but this is Apple CarPlay, and as you can see, it's relatively easy to use. It's very easy to get in and out of, and it's incredibly easy to use with the dial. Now, one thing that's unfortunate is because this is wireless only, for whatever reason, my phone has this issue where it doesn't like to actuate CarPlay while it is recording. However, you can use it exclusively through the dial and exclusively wirelessly. Plus, there's not even Android Auto. And worst of all, it's not even widescreen. So even though these features are really annoying, there are mods available to convert this to a touchscreen, to convert it to widescreen CarPlay, and you can even get some boxes that can go behind the head unit that can add Android Auto if you really want that feature in your BMW.
A cool feature of the iDrive navigation is that you can look for fuel prices, and yes, they are still too expensive.
But besides that, the system is incredibly easy to use. You can go through all your vehicle settings here. It is overall one of the best infotainment systems in the business. Just beneath that are some center air vents, but the weirdest part is this little temperature control. So even though you can actually adjust it through the climate controls here, I can actually adjust how the temperature is coming out of the vents. So for example, if I want cold air coming out of these vents, but I want heat coming out of everywhere else, I can do that just by adjusting this, and it adjusts really fast. Plus, your door lock button also lives in the center. You might have noticed that there aren't any in the door panel, so the only one lives in between the air vents. And that's also where your hazard light button lives too. But we are far from done with the BMW oddities. Right here we have some more iDrive head unit controls. These are pretty old school, but if I hover my finger across this, you can see that I can assign different shortcuts depending on what I want to do with the head unit. So for example, in the vehicle settings, if I want to go to technology and action and I want to set the sport displays as a shortcut, all I have to do is press and hold the button and it'll assign the shortcut right there. So no matter where I am in the iDrive setting, if I just press this button right here, it'll take me right to my sport displays, which with 320 horsepower, I'm definitely going to want to see that. And so not only do we get physical buttons to change your mode here, in addition to here, we also get an AM and FM button, although I do kind of wish this was an XM button. We have a fully physical volume dial, which is fantastic, but we also have a CD slot. How crazy is that? And right beneath that are your fully physical dual zone climate controls. These are incredibly easy to jump from low to high, although notice how there isn't a low and a high. The low is 60 and the high is going to be 84 for today, which is very interesting. It doesn't go from 60 to 90 like in most cars, but it's incredibly easy to use, and surprisingly enough, there is no sync button to be found, but changing air direction is an absolute breeze. One thing that's interesting is the windshield defogger is actually adjusted from this button, but if you want to point air towards your windshield, you just have the upper one selected there. This one does not have an upper one possible, but you can change the air direction for each seat, which is very nice. Changing fan speed is also pretty quick, and if you just do that, it'll just turn it off. As in typical BMW fashion, this is your rear window defroster, and of course you can change between automatic and manual. The best feature though is the fully heated seats. Although one thing I want to point out is that depending on which side you're on, it'll actually move the arrow or move the green light in a different direction as opposed to the driver's seat. Another weird BMW thing, but I quite like their thinking there. Now, just beneath the climate controls, you have this nice little spot to put a key fob.
The key fob is a typical F-Series key fob, but this one has a stripe and presumably a Storal blue, one of my favorite colors.
But right here, if you open this little door, you get access to cup holders. These are incredibly well done and they hold my cup in very nicely, despite the fact that there are no teeth. However, a weird thing is that the 12-volt socket lives in front of the cup holders. Like, what if it leaks on there? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a really weird thing. But overall, I think the cup holders are at a perfectly fine spot. And just behind the cup holders, we have your very nicely laid out center console with your shifter for your 8-speed ZF transmission. Now, it's a shift by wire, so it's incredibly easy to use. All you have to do to shift it to drive is hold the unlock button, push it down, go left for manual mode or sport mode, go up for neutral, go up for reverse, and then push for park, and you can feel it lurch a little bit right there. Speaking of reverse, let's go ahead and look at the backup camera. You can see that it's a pretty basic backup camera with really nice trajectory lines, but if I press this button right here, I actually gain access to a 270-degree camera, which is very weird in contrast to 360-degree cameras on newer cars. And you'll also see the parking assist button light up right here.
Right after filming this, I immediately discovered that if you press the park button again, it'll actually show a top-down camera view, although it doesn't show it on the very front. But it's nice you can see it on the sides and the back.
And just above those, we have your driving mode select. So if you press this one, it will knock the vehicle into sport mode. But press it again, and it'll put it into Sport Plus and deactivate the traction control. How cool is that? But push down a couple more times, it'll put it into Eco Pro, so you can save some gas with that B58 engine. But of course, if you want to turn off the traction control yourself, just press this button right here. But my absolute favorite part about this is the manual handbrake. That is my favorite feature about these F-Series BMWs. And just behind the console, you can open up the center armrest. Now, surprisingly, there isn't a button for the latch, but it does latch shut, and you can see it yields access to a very, very small center console. But look at that, there's a little USB port in there. How neat is that? Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, it's extremely well padded too. Now, unfortunately, the steering wheel is not heated, which is a feature that has come standard on the base level versions of these. Over here is your fully lockable glove box. And if we open this, we actually have a decent sized glove box. Even with the user manual in there, you can still fit some decent sized stuff in there. And there's a nice little halogen convenience light. Plus, there's a lockout for the trunk if you're valeting this car. But audiophiles are really going to appreciate the Harman Kardon sound system. This is a great option, and I'm glad that the original owner optioned this on their car. It actually sounds much better than the stock sound system. Now overhead, we have some nice little dome lights that fade, and we got a button to turn on all the lights inside the cabin. The sun visors are also pretty nice with their own little convenience light, but they don't even extend. Although you can tell why they don't need to make it extend. It's like that much light. That doesn't really matter. But what we do get is a nice size sunroof. It isn't fully panoramic, but you can let in all of that beautiful light into your 440i Gran Coupe. Now, the seats are not only memory, but they're also incredibly comfortable. Not only do we have power adjustment for recline, height adjust, and slide, but we also have lumbar support and bolster adjustment. And I think it works quite well, especially if you have a tough time getting comfortable in a seat. And we also get a leg extension. So overall, it's an incredibly well laid out front cabin.
Now, you might be wondering how backseat comfort is affected by the coupe-like roofline. Let's find out.
Now, once I'm sat in the back seat, with this seat in my default driving position, I have quite a bit of leg room and just enough headroom, me being about 5'8.5". Now, back here, the door panels are almost exactly the same as the front, keeping the one-touch functionality of the windows, nice grab handles, nice door handles, great armrests, and we still have okay-sized bottle pockets back here. And BMW did not cheap out on this back seat. We have some nice net-style door pockets for both the driver and passenger, plus we even get our own air vents with the exact same kind of temperature adjustment. So you can almost say that this has 3-zone climate control. Plus, we even have a 12-volt socket down there, which is perfectly okay for a design that came out back in 2015. A common conception about the Gran Coupe in comparison to the F30 sedan is the reduced headroom due to the sloped roofline. And to some degree that's true, but these seats are actually relatively comfortable. Now, if we pull this little strap down, we get a nice padded armrest. It actually has a lot of padding to it. And if you push this button, we get some decent sized cup holders. And that's not all. If we pull this, you can actually gain access to a center pass-through to the liftgate area, which we'll look at in a few minutes. I also love the way the tweeter and speaker look back here. I think that's really cool. We do get nice little hooks back here, but I am disappointed that we don't have any kind of grab handles. But we still get the same great dome lights that we had in the front. Okay, but how's middle seat comfort? Let me go into my 0.5 here real quick. You can see that it is pretty abysmal. Legroom is actually perfectly fine, but not only am I on a hump seat, my head pretty much hits the ceiling. So I really don't recommend this middle seat for any kind of car ride. It's really meant to function as a 4-seater. So even though the back seat's a little small, I think that it is very well done. But as always, we can fold these seats to gain access to the liftgate area, which can be accessed from here, and you can see, unlike the coupe, it's a full-blown hatch. And once we're back here, you can see I have a ton of storage. Let's go ahead and check it out. Right here, we have a nice little 12-volt socket with this weird little icon. I'm not really sure what that means. Feel free to chime in the comments if you know what that means. Right here, we got some nice little tethering points here. Very creative. Here's where presumably your first aid kit would go. It would be held in right here, though sadly this car doesn't seem to come with it. Over here, we have a nice little net that you can easily pull up and put some more stuff back here. We have your quick release lever for the trunk, and we have some pretty good tethering points. Now, if I move this parcel shelf out of the way, you can see that I have a weird little tie-down net, which is fully attached to the ground. I'm not really sure what this would be good for, but I kind of like the integration. Now, if we pull up on the false floor, you can see that we don't get a spare tire, but we do get someone's duffel bag that was presumably left behind. I'm gonna make sure to let the dealership know about that one.
After filming, Finley Toyota told me that this bag was where the roadside assistance and the first aid kits were kept, so the car actually did come with them.
But with a touch of movie magic, we can 60/40 split fold the seats down, effectively turning the 440i into a van, and this is one reason why you'd want the Gran Coupe over the sedan. Notice how there's no tight opening to get stuff through. So for example, if I wanted to put my bike in the back of this versus, per se, the F30, this might be the vehicle to do it in, and so in that case, I might consider buying one of these. But anyways, let's go ahead and close it up and get to looking at the driving impressions of the 440i Gran Coupe. Now, once we're inside, you'll immediately notice that the steering feel is a little numb versus something like the E90, but since this is the rear-wheel drive, you do get a little bit more of a direct steering feel versus, per se, the X-Drive model. It is fairly light to steer. You can see I can steer it with almost 1 or 2 fingers, but don't worry, it does have a bit of a weighted steering feel, and that can be further adjusted by putting it into sport mode if you want. You can see now I'm in sport mode. Now I can give it a little bit more of a squeeze. Now it's a lot harder to turn with 1 finger, so you can adjust it and you can have a little bit of fun with this. Personally, the steering is not a deal breaker for me, especially on this rear wheel drive model. You can get a little bit of wheel spin in this for sure due to that 320 horsepower B58 engine. So the seats are also incredibly comfortable. Since once again we have the adjustable seat bolsters, I can have the seats grip me incredibly well. And so as a result, the seat comfort is amazing while driving. I find it incredibly easy to rest my arm on the bolster and grip the steering wheel with ease. And I can even put my elbow on this side and grip the steering wheel here too. And these seats are much more comfortable than something like a base model 320i. So you definitely notice that they beefed up these seats just a little bit more, giving you a much more comfortable drive. So not only are you having fun, you're also being very comfortable while doing it. It doesn't feel like a full-blown race car per se. It just feels like something nice that just has a little bit of a kick to it. I love that, especially when going through the corners, and that's incredibly important because this thing handles incredibly well. And that leads me on to how smooth the ride is. It smooths out the bumps incredibly well, a lot better than I would think, given that this is riding on 19-inch wheels. So throttle response is also fantastic. So when you put your foot on the throttle initially, it gives a little bit of a kick, and then it really starts to get into the power band once you get higher into the RPMs and you start really getting on the throttle. So it's very easy to control the power band, a lot more so than I originally thought. Now, even though BMW brakes are typically very sharp, I actually found the brakes on these to be a lot better to control, especially compared to other BMWs I've driven. Typically when I'm hitting the brakes, I have to try and feather it out to get the car to slow down, but not so much on this. It's very direct, and I love that. And as a result, 0 to 60 can happen in around 4.4 seconds, and you really feel this kick you in the back of your seat. Now, of course, you could up the engine performance to 355 horsepower with the MPPSK performance package that these were offered with.
And I was filming this, I discovered that this 440i was indeed equipped with the MPPSK performance pack, which left a very positive impression on me, to say the least.
It's incredibly fun to drive. And don't forget, the B58 has a ton of tuning potential. I've seen people push easily over 400 horsepower with these motors. Now, I feel like road noise is not necessarily applicable to this vehicle. I actually found that the insulation is pretty good inside of the cabin, but honestly, you're gonna wanna be listening to that B58 the whole entire time. Now, when it comes to the 8-speed ZF transmission, this is easily one of the smoothest shifting transmissions in the business even today. This is just the best automatic transmission you can have in any car, and this is one of the few cases where I'd actually recommend it over the manual, even though the manual, which is not available in the Gran Coupe in the United States, does have auto rev matching. The automatic is so smooth and it shifts and it feels absolutely amazing. I would even say in some cases, I'm going to be quite controversial with this, might be better than the DCT. The last thing I want to talk about is the ease of use of the controls. Now, of course, everything's fully physical, so it's incredibly easy to use while not even looking at it. Even the iDrive dial. Again, I am disappointed that there's no touchscreen, but look at how far away it is, and look at how easy it is to control everything right from here. I think this is incredibly well done, and as a result, I am highly considering purchasing one of these for myself, although I will be looking for one with a heated steering wheel and all-wheel drive. And even though this has almost 40,000 miles on it, it's only listed for sale for about 30,000. That's not too bad at all. Now yes, it is missing a couple features like the 6WB cluster, all-wheel drive, and a heated steering wheel. I think this is still an incredibly good deal, especially if you live in a climate that doesn't necessarily demand all-wheel drive. And again, I think the rear-wheel drive drives just a little bit better. But if you need the all-wheel drive, go for it, because you're not losing a whole lot of steering feel there. When it comes to the B58, they can actually go pretty high miles, but just like any other BMW motor, just make sure you stay up to date on oil changes, maintenance, and pretty much everything else. You do have to be prepared to spend BMW money, even though you're getting a pretty good deal right from the get-go. And I didn't feel any weird things in this vehicle at all while driving it. Don't be alarmed by this caution sign, that's just the key fob being low on battery, but it drives just like it would have when it was brand new. So if you're looking for a four-door coupe/sedan car with a little bit of power, I recommend taking a look at the 440i Gran Coupe. Although I do recommend cross-shopping this with the 440i Coupe, the Audi S4, the C43. It really depends on what your taste is like. And they are getting pretty affordable now, so I am getting much closer to being able to purchase one of these for myself. But no matter how fun to drive your vehicle is, I hope you guys drive safe. Thank you so much to Findlay Toyota for lending me this 440i Gran Coupe, and thank you for watching.